poor taxi driver rescues a dying girl, unaware she's a billionaire's daughter. This is a story about one rainy night, one desperate choice, and how a single act of kindness can shatter everything you thought you knew about fate, love, and the price of doing what's right. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing amazing today. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I love hearing from you all around the world. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that might just change the way you see life. Trust me, this one will stay with you. Now, let me take you somewhere dark. Somewhere most people would turn away from. The rain fell like bullets that night, hammering the cracked windshield of Michael's taxi as he drove through the empty industrial district. It was past midnight. The kind of hour when the city sheds its mask and shows you what it really is: cold, indifferent, and unforgiving. Michael's hands gripped the wheel tighter than necessary. His knuckles were pale, scarred from years of struggling to hold on. The meter in his cab ticked silently, but there were no passengers. There hadn't been for hours. Just him, the rain, and the gnawing emptiness in his stomach that had become his closest companion. He should have gone home. But home was a one-room apartment with peeling walls and an eviction notice taped to the door. Home was the place where his mother's photograph sat on a crooked shelf, her eyes forever watching, forever believing in a son who had failed her promise. Just one more fare, he told himself. One more, and maybe tomorrow will be different. That's when he saw it. A shape. Lying motionless on the side of the road, half hidden in the shadows between two rusted streetlights. At first, Michael thought it was trash, a bundle of clothes, maybe. Cars whipped past without slowing. No one cared. No one looked twice. But then he saw the hand. Small. Pale. Fingers curled inward like a dying flower. Michael's foot hovered over the gas pedal. Keep driving, a voice in his head whispered. This city doesn't reward heroes. It buries them. But something stronger pulled at him. Something older than fear. He stopped the car. The rain soaked him instantly as he stepped out, his thin jacket useless against the downpour. He approached slowly, his heart pounding. Up close, he could see her now, a young woman, barely more than a girl, lying face down in the mud. Her dress was torn. Her hair was matted with blood and rain. "Hey," Michael whispered, kneeling beside her. "Hey, can you hear me?" Nothing. He reached out, his hand trembling, and touched her shoulder. She was cold. Too cold. Panic surged through him. No, not like this. Not again. He turned her over gently, and her eyes fluttered open, just barely. They were unfocused, drowning in pain, but alive. Barely. She tried to speak, but only a choked gasp escaped her lips. "I've got you," Michael said, though his voice cracked. "I've got you. You're going to be okay." But even as he said it, he didn't know if he believed it. He lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing and carried her to the taxi. Her head lolled against his chest, her breath shallow and uneven. As he laid her across the back seat, something fell from her hand. A small, gold bracelet. Expensive. Far too expensive for someone left to die on the side of the road. Michael's stomach turned. Who is she? And why was she left here to die? He didn't have answers. But as he slammed the door and sped toward the nearest hospital, one thought echoed in his mind, louder than the rain, louder than the fear. Saving her might be the biggest mistake of his life. The hospital lights were harsh and unforgiving. Michael sat on a plastic chair in the waiting area, his clothes still drenched, his hands still shaking. Nurses rushed past him without a glance. Doctors barked orders behind swinging doors. No one asked if he was okay. No one cared. He stared down at his palms, calloused, dirty, stained with her blood. Why did I stop? The question haunted him, but he already knew the answer. 7 years ago, Michael had watched his mother die in a hospital just like this one. She had fought until her last breath, not for herself, but for him. She had sold everything, her jewelry, her furniture, even her dignity, to pay for his school fees, his food, his future. "Promise me," she had whispered on her deathbed, her voice barely audible. Promise me you'll make something of yourself. Promise me my sacrifice won't be for nothing. He had promised. But 7 years later, here he was, a taxi driver with nothing to his name but debts and broken dreams. He had tried. God knows he had tried. He had applied for jobs, knocked on doors, swallowed his pride 1,000 times. But the world didn't care about. The world cared about results. And Michael had none. The taxi had been his last resort. A borrowed car from a man who charged him half his earnings just to use it. Every night, Michael drove through the city, watching people live the lives he would never have. Watching them laugh, love, succeed. He was invisible to them. Until tonight. "Excuse me." Michael looked up. A young nurse stood before him, her expression soft but cautious. "Are you the one who brought her in?" she asked. He nodded. "She's stable." "Barely. Another 10 minutes and—" The nurse trailed off, but the meaning was clear. Michael exhaled, relief flooding through him. "Can I see her?" The nurse hesitated. "Are you family?" "No. I found her." "Then I'm sorry. Only family is allowed." Michael nodded slowly. He should have expected that. He stood to leave, but the nurse's voice stopped him. "Wait. She's been asking for you." His heart skipped. "What?" She woke up briefly. She doesn't remember much, but she kept saying, "Where is he?" "The man who saved me." Michael swallowed hard. "I didn't save her. I couldn't leave her there." The nurse smiled faintly. "That's more than most people would do." She led him down a sterile hallway to a small recovery room. Inside, the girl lay on a bed, connected to machines that beeped softly. Her face was bruised, her arm bandaged, but her eyes were open. And when she saw him, something flickered in them, recognition, maybe. Or gratitude. "You," she whispered. Michael stepped closer, unsure of what to say. "I'm Michael," he said quietly. "How are you feeling?" "Like I died," she said, her voice weak but laced with dark humor. "But I didn't. Because of you." He shook his head. "I just did what anyone would do." "No." Her gaze sharpened. "Most people drove past me. You didn't." Silence hung between them. "What's your name?" Michael asked. She hesitated, as if the question itself was dangerous. "Grace," she finally said. "Grace," he repeated. "Do you remember what happened to you?" Her expression darkened. Fear crept into her eyes. I don't know. I remember running. I remember voices. And then, nothing." Michael's instinct screamed that something was very, very wrong. But he had no idea just how deep this nightmare would go. 3 days passed. Michael visited Grace every evening after his shifts, though he couldn't explain why. She had no family who came. No friends. No one. Just him. They talked. Small things at first, favorite foods, childhood memories, dreams that felt too fragile to say out loud. Grace was guarded, careful with her words, but slowly, she began to open up. Michael found himself looking forward to those visits more than he cared to admit. On the 4th night, everything changed. Michael arrived at the hospital to find Grace's room empty. Panic seized him. He grabbed a passing nurse. "Where is she?" "The girl in room 12, where did she go?" The nurse looked confused. "She was discharged an hour ago. A family member came for her." "Family?" Michael's blood ran cold. "She doesn't have any family." The nurse frowned. "A man came. He had all the paperwork. Said he was her uncle." Michael's heart pounded. "What did he look like?" "I don't know. Tall. Expensive suit. He seemed legitimate." Michael didn't wait. He ran. He found her outside, near the hospital parking lot, struggling against a man in a black suit who was forcing her toward a sleek, dark car. "Let go of me," Grace shouted, her voice raw with terror. "Grace." She turned, her eyes wide with desperation. "Michael, help me, please." The man in the suit turned sharply, his expression cold and calculating. 2 more men stepped out of the car, bodyguards, clearly. "Walk away," the suited man said calmly. "This doesn't concern you." Michael's fists clenched. Every instinct told him to run. To stay out of it. To survive. But he thought of his mother. He thought of the promise he made. And he stepped forward. Let her go. The man smiled, a smile that promised violence. You have no idea who you're dealing with, do you? I don't care. Grace wrenched free and ran toward Michael. He caught her, pulling her behind him. The suited man's smile vanished. You just made the worst mistake of your life, he said quietly. And as the bodyguards moved forward, Michael realized with horrifying clarity. He had just stepped into a war he didn't understand, and there was no turning back. The bodyguards advanced, but Michael didn't back down. Run, he whispered to Grace. Get out of here. I'm not leaving you, she hissed back. Before the first guard could reach them, a sharp voice cut through the air. Stop. Everyone froze. A black limousine pulled up to the curb, its windows tinted dark. The door opened, and a woman in her 50s stepped out, elegant, composed, radiating authority. Her eyes swept the scene with cold precision. Mrs. Whitmore, the suited man said, his confidence wavering. The woman ignored him. Her gaze locked on Grace. Grace, get in the car. Now. Grace's hand tightened around Michael's arm. No. This man has no idea what he's involving himself in, Mrs. Whitmore said, her tone sharp. And you're putting him in danger every second you stay near him. Michael stepped forward. Who are you? Mrs. Whitmore's eyes flicked to him with barely concealed disdain. Someone far above your concern, mister. Michael. Well, Michael. Grace is coming with me. This doesn't involve you. It does now, Michael said firmly. For the first time, something flickered in Mrs. Whitmore's expression, surprise, perhaps. Or respect. Grace pulled Michael aside. Please. Just go. These people, they're dangerous. They'll destroy you. Then tell me the truth, Michael said quietly. Who are you, Grace? Really? She hesitated, tears welling in her eyes. I can't. If I tell you, you'll never be safe again. I'm already not safe. Grace looked at Mrs. Whitmore, then back at Michael. She took a shaky breath. My father is Richard Aldridge. The name hit Michael like a freight train. Richard Aldridge, one of the wealthiest men in the country. Hotels. Real estate. Technology. His empire stretched across continents. You're his daughter? Grace nodded. And 3 weeks ago, I found out someone close to him is trying to kill me. Michael's world tilted. That's why I ran. That's why I was on that road. Her voice cracked. Someone in my father's inner circle wants me dead. And if they find out you saved me, they'll come for you too. Mrs. Whitmore stepped forward. Enough. Grace, this ends now. Your father has been searching for you. He's terrified. Come home. How do I know I can trust him? Grace's voice trembled. How do I know you're not the one trying to kill me? The question hung in the air like a blade. Mrs. Whitmore's face softened, just barely. Because I've protected you since you were a child, Grace. And I'm not about to stop now. Grace looked at Michael, her eyes pleading. What do I do? Michael's mind raced. This was insane. Billionaires. Assassination attempts. He was a taxi driver. He had no business being here. But when he looked at Grace, vulnerable, terrified, and clinging to him like he was her last hope, he knew he couldn't walk away. You go with her, Michael said. But I'm coming too. Mrs. Whitmore raised an eyebrow. Absolutely not. Then Grace doesn't go. The two locked eyes in a silent standoff. Finally, Mrs. Whitmore sighed. Fine. But if you slow us down, you're out. They climbed into the limousine. As the car pulled away, Michael caught a glimpse of the suited man watching them leave, his expression dark with fury. Inside the car, Grace sat beside Michael, her hand finding his. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet, he said. I have no idea what I just got us into. But as her fingers intertwined with his, something sparked between them, something neither could deny. And in the shadows, someone was already making their next move. The Aldridge estate was more fortress than home. 20-foot walls. Armed guards. Cameras everywhere. Michael felt like he'd stepped into another world, one where people like him didn't belong. Richard Aldridge met them in his study, a room lined with mahogany and leather. He was tall, silver-haired, with eyes that had seen too much. When he saw Grace, his composure shattered. Grace. His voice broke. My God, Grace. She ran to him, and he held her like she might disappear again. Michael stood awkwardly by the door, suddenly feeling like an intruder. After a long moment, Richard pulled back and looked at Michael. You're the one who saved her. Michael nodded. Richard extended his hand. Thank you. I owe you a debt I can never repay. I don't want anything, Michael said. I just want her safe. Something shifted in Richard's expression, approval maybe. Sir, Mrs. Whitmore interrupted. We need to discuss the situation. Richard's face hardened. He turned to Grace. Tell me everything. Grace recounted the last 3 weeks, how she'd overheard a conversation late one night, voices in her father's office discussing removing the liability. How she'd recognized one of the voices. How she'd realized with horror that they were talking about her. I didn't know who to trust, she said, her voice trembling. So I ran. Who? Richard's voice was ice. Who did you hear? Grace hesitated. Then, in a whisper, Uncle Victor. The room went deadly silent. Victor Aldridge. Richard's younger brother and business partner. No. Richard shook his head. Victor wouldn't. I know what I heard, Dad. Richard's fists clenched. Where is he now? In Singapore, Mrs. Whitmore said. For the merger negotiations. Richard's jaw tightened. Get him on the phone. Now. As Mrs. Whitmore made the call, Grace pulled Michael aside. You should leave, she said quietly. This is about to get ugly. I'm not going anywhere. Michael, these people don't play games. If Victor finds out you're involved, let him find out. Grace's eyes glistened. Why? Why are you doing this? Michael looked at her, really looked at her. In the hospital, he'd seen a broken girl who needed help. But now, standing in this mansion, wearing borrowed clothes and carrying the weight of a family war, he saw something else. He saw someone who, like him, had been abandoned by the people who should have protected her. Because you deserve someone who won't run, he said. Before she could respond, Richard's voice boomed across the room. He denied it. Said I'm paranoid. Said Grace is troubled. His face was red with fury. Sir, Mrs. Whitmore said carefully. Perhaps we should. I want surveillance on him. Everything. Calls, emails, movements. If my brother is trying to kill my daughter, I will bury him. Grace flinched. Michael stepped forward. Mr. Aldridge. If Victor knows you're onto him, he'll disappear. Or worse, he'll accelerate. Richard studied him. What do you suggest? Let him think he's won. Let him think Grace is still missing, still vulnerable. And when he makes his move, we catch him. Richard's eyes narrowed. You're smarter than you look, kid. I've had to be. For the first time, Richard smiled grim, but genuine. All right. We do it your way. As the meeting dispersed, Grace caught Michael's hand. You didn't have to do that, she said softly. Yes, I did. Their eyes locked. And in that moment, the walls between them crumbled. She leaned in, and he met her halfway, a kiss that tasted of fear, hope, and something neither of them dared name yet. When they pulled apart, Grace whispered, if this goes wrong. It won't. But Michael knew the truth. They were walking into a trap. And someone very close was holding the strings. The plan unraveled in 48 hours. Victor returned from Singapore early, claiming family concerns. Richard played his part perfectly, cold, distant, convinced Grace was still missing. But Michael could see the cracks forming. Victor was too calm, too composed. On the third night, everything fell apart. Michael was walking the estate grounds with Grace when his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You think you're protecting her. You're not. You're the bait. His blood turned to ice. Grace. We need to go. Now. What? Why? Before he could answer, the lights went out. Gunfire erupted. Michael grabbed Grace and ran, pulling her into the garden maze as bullets tore through the hedges behind them. Shouts echoed. Guards fell. Chaos consumed the estate. Stay low, Michael hissed. They stumbled through the darkness until they hit a dead end. Michael's heart pounded. They were trapped. A figure emerged from the shadows. Victor. But he wasn't alone. Behind him stood Richard, holding a gun. Grace gasped. Dad? Richard's face was unreadable. I'm sorry, sweetheart. No, Grace whispered. No, you wouldn't. You were always the weak link, Richard said coldly. Too soft. Too naive. The company needs strength, not sentiment. Victor smiled. Your father and I have been planning this for months, Grace. The merger. The expansion. It all requires capital. And your trust fund is worth $3 billion. Grace's knees buckled. You, both of you. Michael stepped in front of her, shielding her. You won't touch her. Richard laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. You? A taxi driver? You think you can stop us? I think you underestimate what desperate people are capable of. Victor raised his gun. Goodbye, Mr. Nobody. The shot rang out. But it wasn't Michael who fell. It was Victor. Richard stood frozen, his own gun smoking. What? Victor collapsed, clutching his chest. Richard's hand trembled. He looked at Grace, and for a fleeting second, Michael saw something crack in the man's armor. Run, Richard whispered. Run and don't look back. Dad. Go. Michael grabbed Grace and ran. Behind them, sirens wailed. Shouts erupted. The estate descended into madness. They didn't stop until they reached Michael's old taxi, hidden in a parking garage miles away. Grace collapsed into the passenger seat, sobbing uncontrollably. He tried to kill me, she choked. My own father. Michael had no words. He just held her as the world they'd built in 3 days shattered around them. And somewhere in the darkness, Richard Aldridge made a call that would change everything. They hid in Michael's old apartment, the one with peeling walls and an eviction notice. Grace sat on the worn couch, numb. Michael paced, his mind racing. We can't stay here, he said. They'll find us. Where do we go? Grace's voice was hollow. Everyone I trusted is gone. Michael knelt in front of her. Not everyone. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. You still have me. Michael, you barely know me. You don't owe me anything. I know enough. And I made a choice the night I picked you up off that road. I'm not abandoning you now. For a long moment, Grace just stared at him. Then, slowly, she nodded. Okay. Michael's phone buzzed. Another unknown number. He answered cautiously. Hello, Mr. Michael. It was Mrs. Whitmore. Don't hang up. Why should I trust you? Because I just risked my life getting evidence that will clear your name and save Grace. Michael's pulse quickened. What evidence? Security footage. Financial records. Communications. Everything that proves Victor and Richard conspired to murder Grace for her inheritance. And I have something else. What? Richard didn't shoot Victor to save you. He shot him because Victor was going to frame him for Grace's death. They were never partners. They were enemies. And Richard just realized he was about to be destroyed. Michael's mind reeled. Where are you? I'm going to the authorities. But I need you to bring Grace to the federal building tomorrow at noon. If she testifies, we can end this. How do I know this isn't a trap? You don't, Mrs. Whitmore said simply. But it's the only chance either of you have. The line went dead. Michael looked at Grace. We have a choice. We run and spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. Or we fight. Grace stood, her jaw set with newfound determination. I'm done running. Michael smiled. Good. Because I have a plan. The next morning, they didn't go to the federal building. They went to the media. Michael contacted every journalist, blogger, and news outlet he could find. Grace told her story live, unfiltered, raw. She showed the scars, the fear, the betrayal. And the world watched. Within hours, the footage went viral. Millions of views. Public outrage. Protests outside Aldridge headquarters. Richard and Victor had nowhere to hide. At 11:55 a.m., 5 minutes before the meeting at the federal building, federal agents swarmed the Aldridge estate. Richard was arrested. Victor, already wounded, was taken into custody. And Grace, standing beside Michael as cameras flashed, finally exhaled. It's over, she whispered. Michael took her hand. No, he said. It's just beginning. Because the world was about to learn that heroes don't always wear suits and love doesn't ask for permission. The trial became the most watched event of the year. Richard Aldridge and Victor Aldridge, once titans of industry, sat in matching orange jumpsuits as prosecutors laid out their crimes in brutal detail. Conspiracy. Attempted murder. Fraud. Grace testified for 6 hours. Michael sat in the gallery, watching her transform from a frightened girl into a woman who refused to be silenced. She didn't waver. Didn't break. When the defense tried to paint her as mentally unstable or influenced by Michael, she shut them down with surgical precision. "I was hunted by my own family," she said, her voice steady. "And the only person who showed me kindness was a stranger who had nothing to gain." That's not instability. That's the truth. The courtroom erupted. On the final day, the verdict came swiftly, guilty on all counts. Richard showed no emotion as he was led away. But as he passed Grace, he stopped. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Grace didn't respond. She simply turned away. Outside the courthouse, a mob of reporters swarmed them. Microphones. Cameras. Questions shouted from every direction. "Grace, how do you feel? What's next for you? Are you and Michael together?" Michael started to pull her away, but Grace stopped him. She turned to the cameras, composed and radiant. "For years, I lived in a world where power and money dictated everything, where love was transactional and loyalty was bought. I thought that was normal. I thought that was life." She looked at Michael. "But then a taxi driver stopped on a rainy night when no one else would. He didn't know who I was. Didn't care about my name or my wealth. He just saw someone who needed help. And he helped." Her voice softened. "That's the kind of person I want to be. That's the kind of world I want to build. And I'm going to use every resource I have to make sure people like Michael, people who do the right thing when it's hardest, are never overlooked again." The crowd fell silent. Then, from somewhere in the back, someone started clapping. Then another. And another. Until the entire crowd erupted into applause. Michael's throat tightened. He'd spent 7 years invisible, struggling unnoticed. And now, for the first time, the world was finally seeing him. That evening, Grace took Michael to the rooftop of her now-reclaimed estate. The city sprawled below them, glittering and alive. "I've been thinking," Grace said, "about what comes next. And I want to start a foundation. For people who've been abandoned by the system. Drivers, workers, anyone who's been overlooked." She turned to him. "And I want you to run it with me." Michael blinked. "Grace, I'm not. You're exactly who I need. Someone who understands what it's like to be invisible." He was quiet for a long moment. "My mother used to tell me that my life would matter someday," he said softly. "I spent 7 years thinking she was wrong. She wasn't." Michael turned to Grace, his heart full. "I never thought I'd find someone who saw me the way you do." Grace smiled. "I never thought I'd find someone who'd risk everything for me without asking for anything in return." Michael reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Grace's eyes widened. "I know this is crazy," Michael said, his voice trembling. "I know we've only known each other a few weeks. But I also know that I've spent my whole life waiting for something real. And you're the most real thing I've ever known." He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver band, nothing extravagant, nothing flashy. "Grace Aldridge, will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face. "Yes." And as Michael slipped the ring onto her finger, the city below seemed to glow a little brighter. Because some love stories aren't written in boardrooms or ballrooms, they're written on rainy roads by people brave enough to stop. The wedding was unlike anything the city had ever seen. Not because it was lavish, though it was beautiful, but because of who attended. Taxi drivers. Nurses. Mechanics. The people who'd been invisible their whole lives, now dressed in their finest, celebrated alongside billionaires and dignitaries. Grace had insisted. "These are the people who matter," she'd said. "The ones who show up when no one's watching." Michael stood at the altar, his heart pounding as Grace walked down the aisle. She wore a simple white dress, elegant and understated. But to him, she looked like everything. When she reached him, she whispered, "You ready?" "I've been ready since that rainy night." The officiant smiled. "We are gathered here today." But Michael barely heard the words. All he could see was Grace. All he could feel was the impossible miracle of this moment. When they exchanged vows, Grace's voice was steady and clear. Michael, you saved my life. But more than that, you showed me what it means to live with integrity, courage, and love. You didn't ask for anything. You just gave. And I promise to spend the rest of my life honoring that gift. Michael's voice cracked as he spoke. Grace, you taught me that my life matters. That the choices I make, even the smallest ones, can change everything. I promise to stand by you, to protect you, and to love you for the rest of my days. The officiant beamed. I now pronounce you husband and wife. And as they kissed, the crowd erupted into cheers. At the reception, Grace stood and raised her glass. To everyone here, thank you. Thank you for believing in second chances. Thank you for showing up. And thank you for reminding me that the best things in life aren't bought. They're earned. She looked at Michael. And sometimes, they're found on the side of the road in the rain. The crowd laughed and cheered. Later that night, as they danced under the stars, Grace rested her head on Michael's shoulder. Do you ever think about that night? She asked. Every day. Do you regret it? Michael pulled back and looked into her eyes. Not for a second. She smiled. Good. Because I have big plans for us. Oh yeah. The foundation launches next month. And I want to expand shelters, scholarships, job training programs. We're going to change lives, Michael. He grinned. We already have. And as they swayed together, the city below them buzzing with life, Michael thought of his mother. I kept my promise, Mom. My life mattered. And it's just beginning. Months later, the foundation was thriving. Thousands of people had been helped. Michael's face was on magazine covers. Grace's name was synonymous with change. But the greatest reward came one quiet evening when Michael received a letter. It was from a young taxi driver named Ethan. Dear Mr. Michael, I heard your story. I was about to give up on everything. But then I read about you, how you kept going even when the world told you to stop. You reminded me that one moment can change everything. Last week, I stopped to help an old man who'd collapsed. Turned out he was a retired teacher with no family. I stayed with him at the hospital. He's okay now. And he told me I reminded him of why he became a teacher in the first place, to help people. Thank you for showing me that kindness isn't weakness. It's strength. Your story saved my life. Michael read the letter twice, tears streaming down his face. Grace found him on the balcony, staring at the city. You okay? She asked. He handed her the letter. She read it, and when she finished, she wrapped her arms around him. See? She whispered. Your mother was right. Your life matters. Michael smiled. So does yours. And as they stood together, watching the city they were slowly changing one act of kindness at a time, Michael realized something profound. Heroes aren't born in mansions or boardrooms. They're born on rainy roads. In moments of choice. In people brave enough to stop when everyone else drives past. And sometimes, just sometimes, those heroes get their happy ending. One act of kindness, done in the dark, can rewrite an entire destiny.